Ever wondered how deep the roots of racism extend in America? It's an uncomfortable question, yet it's one we can't shy away from. Racism, a term that's been part of our history for centuries, has left profound imprints on certain regions. It's a bitter truth that in some corners of this great nation, prejudice still casts a long and dark shadow. Join us as we journey into the heart of America, unveiling the top 10 towns where racism still thrives. Starting off our countdown at number 10, we find ourselves in a small, seemingly unassuming town. But don't let its charm fool you. This town, like a well-aged book, holds a history that's more complex than its quaint facade suggests. Its roots extend back to the early days of America, where the bitter seeds of racism found fertile ground. Over the years, the town has been the site of numerous racially charged incidents. From blatant discrimination in public spaces to more subtle, insidious forms of racism, the town's history is marred by a legacy of intolerance. Fast forward to today and you'll find that the current situation is a mixture of progress and stagnation. While some residents have made commendable efforts to address the town's racial issues, the echoes of the past still resonate strongly, casting a long, unwelcome shadow over the town. Despite the efforts of some, this town remains steeped in racial tension. Moving on to number 9, we delve into the heart of a town that wears its history like a scar, a testament to the discrimination that once ran rampant. This town, like many others, was a battleground for civil rights, a stage where the fight for equality played out in vivid, unsettling detail. Its streets, though now bustling with the humdrum of everyday life, were once the canvas for racial segregation, with invisible lines drawn between communities based on the color of their skin. Its schools, now championing diversity, were the sites of forced integration, a move that was met with resistance and hostility. Today, this town has made significant strides towards equality, but the remnants of its racist past are still palpable. Residents continue to grapple with the aftermath of decades-long discrimination, and the process of healing is far from over. Here, the echoes of a prejudiced past still resonate. At number 8, we uncover a town where prejudices seem to have been woven into the fabric of its history. This community, with its charming yet misleading facade, has a past and present that is marred by racial tension and discrimination. The town's record is littered with incidents of blatant racism that have come to define its reputation. From racial profiling by the local law enforcement to unequal educational opportunities, the town has been a hotbed of racial disparities. Despite its idyllic setting, the community's legacy has been tainted by a series of racially charged incidents. Just a few years ago, the town made national headlines due to a racially motivated act of vandalism. The current state of affairs, however, is not entirely bleak. The town's residents, along with dedicated activists, are striving for change, working tirelessly to rewrite the narrative of their home. This town serves as a stark reminder of the work that still needs to be done. Number 7 on our list takes us to a town that may seem idyllic at first glance, but peel back the layers and you'll uncover a history steeped in racial tension and prejudice. This town, like many others, started off as a melting pot of different ethnicities. However, as the decades rolled by, the darker underbelly of racial bias began to surface. The town's history is riddled with incidents of segregation, discrimination, and racial violence, a chilling testament to the prejudice that was, and to some extent, still is, prevalent. Today, the town is a stark contrast to its past, but the seeds of racism continue to sprout. Despite the town's efforts to leave its past behind, the racial climate remains tense. Instances of racial profiling, hate speech, and discrimination are not uncommon, reminding us that while the town has come a long way, it still has a long way to go. The specter of racism still looms large here. Coming in at number 6, we find a town where the shadows of the past linger in the present. This is a place where history has left indelible marks, and echoes of racial tension can still be heard. The town was once a hotbed of racial discrimination, with segregation laws that divided the community and a racial hierarchy that was deeply entrenched. Over the years, the town has grappled with its complicated past, confronting the ghosts of a time when equality was a distant dream. The struggle for racial justice has been a long and winding road with many battles fought and won, yet the journey is far from over. Today, the town still faces challenges. Despite progress, disparities persist in areas like education and employment. Racial tension, while not as overt as in the past, still simmers beneath the surface. But the residents are not standing idle. They are actively working towards a more inclusive future. In this town, the fight against racism continues. Halfway through our countdown at number 5, we arrive in a town that's seemingly serene. Yet, beneath its picturesque facade, the shadows of its past stretch long and deep. Established in the late 19th century, this town was once a bustling hub of industry. But it wasn't long before the ugly face of racism began to show itself. A series of racially motivated incidents cast a dark cloud over the town's history, incidents that, sadly, are not confined to the past. Even today in the 21st century, this town is grappling with the legacy of its past. Reports of racial discrimination are all too common, painting a stark picture of a town still rooted in its prejudiced ways. Despite efforts to reform and change, it seems the old attitudes are hard to shake off. This town is a testament to the enduring scourge of racism. Number 4 on our list brings us to the heartland of America, a place where the charm of small-town life is overshadowed by a history of racial disharmony. This town, with its picturesque landscapes, is where one would least expect to encounter the undercurrents of racial prejudice, but beneath the veneer of tranquility, the town has been the theater of numerous racial incidents, echoing the darker side of its past. Over the years, the town has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. Notable incidents include racially motivated attacks and discriminatory practices that have left scars on the community. The prevailing racial climate is one of tension and mistrust, with the community divided along racial lines. Despite efforts to address these issues, progress has been slow. The town's leadership has been criticized for failing to take strong enough measures to curb racism. Here, the battle against racial prejudice is far from over. Closing in on the top, at number 3, we discover a town steeped in a history that's hard to digest. This town, with its picturesque landscapes, has a hidden narrative that runs deep into the roots of our nation's past. A narrative of racial prejudice that has permeated through its cobblestone streets and quaint homes. In the late 19th century, this town was a hotbed for racial tension, with segregation deeply embedded in its social fabric. As we fast forward to the present day, it's disheartening to see the remnants of this mindset still thriving, subtly, yet significantly. Despite the progress we've made as a society, there are still instances of racial profiling and discrimination that are reported here. These incidents, though not as overt as they once were, are an uncomfortable reminder of the town's troubled past. This town stands as a stark reminder of the persisting reality of racism. At number 2, we come face to face with the town of Harrison, Arkansas, a town deeply entrenched in a history marred by racial tension. Harrison is infamous for its past association with the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist hate group that had a stronghold here in the 20th century. Over the decades, the town has made efforts to distance itself from this dark past, but the ghosts of its history are not easily forgotten. Today, the town still grapples with racial issues, with reports of hate crimes and racial discrimination lingering around its streets. The town's population is predominantly white, with people of color making up a small fraction. This demographic imbalance often fosters an environment of isolation and exclusion for minority groups. Despite the town's efforts to confront its past and foster racial harmony, the challenge remains significant. The shadows of a racially charged past still loom here. And finally, the most racist town in America is, drumroll please, Sundown Town. This town, steeped in a checkered past, carries the weight of a deeply rooted history of racism. Sundown Town was a place where non-whites were unwelcome after sunset, hence the name. This practice was enforced by discriminatory local laws and social practices that were as potent as any legal decree. These laws may have been abolished on paper, but even today, the echoes of this past can still be heard. In the present day, Sundown Town is not as overtly racist as it once was, but the remnants of its past linger. Racial tension is palpable, and the community remains largely segregated. It is a stark reminder that the struggle for racial equality is far from over. The shadows of the past still loom large over Sundown Town, casting a pall over its present and future. This town, sadly, takes the dubious honor of being America's most racist town. To recap our journey into the heart of America's racial landscape, we've traversed 10 towns where racism has cast a long shadow. From the stark segregation in our 10th town to the systemic biases in our 9th and 8th towns. We've seen the racial tensions in towns 7 through 4, and felt the palpable hostility in our 3rd, 2nd, and the most racist town. As we continue to strive for equality, these towns serve as reminders of the long road ahead.